All right, today we are diving into something really cool, a logical puzzle straight from the Talmud that feels a lot like a detective story. Seriously. It all kicks off with a simple question about, mixing things together, but it spirals into this deep investigation about rules, exceptions, and this fascinating idea of what makes something truly significant. So let's jump right in.
We've all heard that saying, right? But in law and logic, this is a dead serious question. If one forbidden thing falls into a big batch of permitted stuff, what's the verdict? Does it just get absorbed and disappear, or does it contaminate the entire thing? This is the exact problem the ancient sages were grappling with.
So, to crack this case, we're going to follow the Talmud's chain of reasoning step by step. We'll start with the basic rule of thumb, then uncover a really weird redundancy in the law. From there, we'll dig into the core principles, watch the sages debate the meaning of a single word, and finally, uncover a brilliant logical twist that solves the whole puzzle.
Okay, so first things first, let's cover the basics. In Jewish law, you've got this general principle. It says that if a tiny bit of something forbidden accidentally gets mixed in with a whole lot of something permitted, the smaller thing just kind of gets canceled out. The majority wins. The whole batch is totally fine. Seems simple enough, doesn't it? Well, as you can probably guess, it's not always that straightforward.
Because, of course, there's a huge exception. There are certain things that are considered so fundamentally forbidden that even the smallest possible amount, we're talking a single drop or one animal in an entire herd, can never ever be nullified. It spoils the whole bunch, period, no matter how big the majority is. And this is where our mystery really gets going.
And this brings us to the very first clue in our detective story. The Talmud notices something strange. This very specific rule that some things are just never canceled out shows up in two totally different legal contexts, talking about two different things. And the big question is, why?
And here you can see just how similar they are. On one side, you have a law about sacred offerings. If one animal that's unfit for sacrifice gets mixed in with a herd of valid ones, the whole group becomes forbidden. On the other side, you have a law about idolatry. One single drop of wine that was used for idolatry worship gets mixed into a huge vat of kosher wine, and the whole batch is forbidden. I mean, it really seems like the exact same idea, right?
This is the question that really kicks off the entire Talmudic investigation. You have to understand, ancient legal texts like this are incredibly precise. They do not waste a single word. So if a rule shows up twice, it's not a typo. It's a clue. It means there's something deeper that we're missing.
So the Talmud's first crack at this is just a classic piece of logical deduction. The argument is, look, you absolutely need both laws. Think about it. Without the rule about sacred animals, you might say, hey, we don't want the temple to lose money, so let's just be lenient and let this one slide. So you need that law to prevent that. But then if you only had the rule about the animals, you could argue, oh, that's a special holy case. It's repulsive. For regular stuff like wine, nah, let's just nullify it. You see, you need the wine law too. Each rule plugs a potential logical hole left by the other. So, case closed, right? Ha, not even close.
Just when it seems like the problem is solved, the Talmud does what it does best. It zooms out and asks an even bigger, more fundamental question. Forget for a second why there are two laws. Why does this exception exist at all? What is it about these particular things, sacrificial animals, idolatrous wine, that makes them so special they can never be canceled out?
And this question leads us to the heart of the matter, this key legal concept called davar hashuv. It literally means a significant item, or an important thing. The idea here is that some items just have this inherent importance, this distinct identity that can't be erased just because they get lost in a crowd. They're too unique, they stand out, they matter too much to be ignored.
Okay, great. So we've got a principle. Significant things don't get nullified. But as you can imagine, this just opens up a whole new can of worms, a new problem. What in the world makes something significant? And this is where the real fireworks start.
So one sage, Rabbi Meir, comes in with this really broad, elegant rule. He says, look, if it's the kind of thing you normally sell by counting it, one by one, instead of just selling it by weight or volume, then it's significant. Think about it. It's like apples versus flour. You count the apples, you weigh the flour. For Rabbi Meir, that simple act of counting gives an item a special status, an individuality that can't just be wiped away.
But the other rabbis, they totally disagree. They throw out Rabbi Meir's broad principle. Instead, they say, no, an item is only significant if it's on this very specific, very short list. You've got your special nuts, pomegranates, sealed barrels, you get the idea. If it's not on their list, it's not significant. End of story. And this is just a classic legal battle, a general sweeping principle versus a specific closed list.
And just when you think you've got a handle on things, the plot thickens yet again. The Talmud starts to dissect Rabbi Meir's opinion. What does he actually mean by whose matter is to be counted? Does that mean it's sometimes counted, or does it mean it's always counted? This tiny little distinction is about to blow the entire case wide open.
So two later sages, Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, go head-to-head on this. Rish Lakish says Rabbi Meir meant anything that is sometimes counted. That would include animals, right? You can buy one sheep, but you can also buy a whole herd by weight. But Rabbi Yochanan has a much stricter view. He says, no, Rabbi Meir meant only things that are always and only sold by the piece, and under his definition, animals would not be considered significant items.
And this is the whole ball game. If you go with Rish Lakish's interpretation, everything clicks into place. Animals are significant because they're sometimes counted, and that's why the one forbidden animal isn't nullified. The puzzle is solved. But if you follow Rabbi Yochanan, we are right back at square one. If animals aren't significant, then they should be nullified by the majority. But we know from our original law that they aren't. We've got a massive contradiction on our hands.
So what do we do now? Following Rabbi Yochanan's logic, we have a law saying sacrificial animals can't be nullified, but they don't seem to fit the very principle that's supposed to explain that law. This is it. This is the final act of our whole detective story.
Let's just state the problem one more time, crystal clear. According to Rabbi Yochanan, why doesn't the rule of the majority just take over and nullify that one bad animal in the herd? If it doesn't qualify as a davar chashuv, a significant item, what makes it the exception? The answer comes from another sage, Rav Papa, and it is absolutely brilliant.
Rav Papa pulls back the curtain and reveals the final twist. He says, basically, we've all been looking in the wrong place. The law about the prohibited animals not being nullified, it's not based on Rabbi Meir's definition of significant at all. It's actually based on an entirely different and even stricter minority opinion, one that says any item that can be counted, no matter what, is never nullified. We were trying to make the law fit the wrong precedent this whole time.
And that just perfectly sums up this entire intellectual journey, doesn't it? We started with what looked like a simple typo, two laws that seem the same. That forced us to question the basic principle, which led to a huge debate over a single word, which finally revealed that our first assumption about which rule was even being applied was completely wrong from the get-go. It is an absolute masterclass in logical detective work.
So after all that, what are we left with? You know, this ancient debate actually forces us to think about some really big, really modern questions. When is an individual so significant that it just can't be absorbed by the group? When should a principle be absolute with no exceptions? And how in the world do we build systems of rules that are both consistent and just? What's amazing about this Talmudic case is it shows us that these aren't new problems. These are the exact kinds of questions we've been wrestling with for thousands of years.